Hey guys, Joey here. Welcome to episode 11 of Droolish. Let's get going. Welcome back to Droolish, my friends. This is Joey Montano, your host. Episode 11. Can't believe we're on episode 11. Now, some of you might be thinking, and I actually do have a few downloads, which makes me very excited because I expected nothing overall. I expected nothing. But I actually still get about 7 to 10 downloads that are like always right out of the gate. So for you 7 to 10 people that are continuing to download and subscribe on a continual basis, you rock. And for those who are just finding me on podcast or on YouTube or Twitter or anywhere else, you also rock because, oh, you're amazing for finding me. That's very obvious. No, but seriously, I'm super appreciative of kind of the, these are downloads and I don't know if everyone listens to it, but there seems to be enough of a hook, at least for some of you people to listen, and hopefully I start achieving the goal of at least easing your relaxation or calming you down with some of the background noises and music that I play on the podcast too. Although I'm going to veer away from the music at this point, mainly because it just it takes me so long to find different types of lo-fi music that I think people will enjoy, calm music, and then go through like the whole copyrights and like try to get the rights, and then some people take forever to actually get back, and some of them don't even some people don't say like the certain copyrights that I'm allowed to use. So for me, it's more so a convenience thing, and I know it sounds lazy, but I rarely have time to do these podcast episodes, and I'm really making an effort, especially moving forward, to produce at least 2 episodes a week and to slowly get better. So I'm not going to say the music's going to be gone. It's just the way I see it. I feel that a gradual, say, rain sound or some white noise in the background will be way more effective than vice versa. So yeah, if you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast where you just listen to me talk about kind of what's going on in the world, but don't take it too seriously. Some episodes tend to be more, it's mainly whatever's going on in my life or whatever pops in my head that I think is funny or a good idea. So, for example, if you are interested in anime, which I don't know if any of you are, I have a 5-part series, and it's going to be released into a full 10-hour episode, which was the goal, on YouTube. So feel free to check out my YouTube. I know I don't like to oversell myself, but I feel like I'm getting at the point to where if you're going to be interested in the podcast, and I'm pretty comfortable, getting more comfortable these days, and just saying, YOLO, I'm just going to release my stuff. And if you're someone who is wanting to get into podcasting and you're a little bit nervous or scared that, it might not go well, or people are going to harp you, or you sound whatever, just remember this. No one gives a shit. Okay. Like, I don't want to be mean, but like literally no one cares if your podcast is subpar. If you're completely terrible, then technically you kind of will get fans of people who will share your stuff that will say you're bad, but don't fret. Most of the time, these people are usually ill-informed, like me. But you're still going to get some level of constructive criticism if you're, quote-unquote, so bad that you're going to get noticed from a different community. But for the most part, I feel like most people are so focused and wrapped up in themselves that they're not trying to provide like a value for others. And that's my goal for the podcast, is that I know I'm very long-winded, and case in point is that we're in minute 4.5 and I haven't even gotten to my first point. But if you're new to podcasting, or if you're interested in getting into it, and I've talked to a few people about podcasting, especially over the last few weeks, and it seems that most people are generally afraid to take that first step. And a lot of people actually are more aware of knowing what to do, like getting this set up and finding a subject. but it's just going out and just creating a fake episode just to get the ball rolling. If you want to have like a launch party or whatever, go ahead and do that. That's their prerogative, and that's probably a lot better to promote a podcast and try to get that, shown to the world. Whereas for me, I've mentioned this before. I really wanted to be low key in my episodes, mainly because I wasn't too sure kind of about the concept and seeing if people were even wanting to like it. And now that I'm at 600 downloads, which I know for a lot of people it sounds small potatoes, but for me, who expected not even like a single download, this is pretty cool. And for, like I said, the several of you now, I think I've upgraded to several. The several of you that continue to listen, I appreciate it. I appreciate it a bunch. And hopefully I can continue to provide some sort of value. So today, I am going to be discussing a few things. I'm mainly going to be discussing two main things. Wanted to change it up just a little bit. And the first thing I want to talk about is kind of reflecting on 9/11, just a little bit. And I don't think it's going to take too long for that one. I didn't want to make the show this episode completely all about 9/11. And I think a lot of us, especially, I would imagine everyone that is, if I had to guess an age, and I can't speak for everyone, probably if you're about 23 at the very earliest, maybe like 25, everyone can remember kind of like where they were on 9/11, what they were doing, and for me, I thought it'd be a pretty interesting idea for just to reflect at least on my story. And the reason why I mentioned that is because I came across a different comment on Reddit. I was browsing it last night, kind of just going over some football material, and someone wrote a subject about on September 10, a football player, I forgot his name, a football player for the Denver Broncos broke his leg on Monday Night Football, and all of Denver and all the fans were so focused on, waking up the next day, and they're going to be eager or distraught about discussing, our season's destroyed. Like, what happened to this guy's leg? Is he going to be all right? And when they woke up, since it was Mountain Time, most people woke up to the news of 9/11, which, the whole point of that read was that, nothing else mattered on 9/11 of football. Everyone had one thing that mattered to them, and that was more of the, I can't say like the tax of 9/11 is more of like it was just all about that day and just coping with it. So I think all of us certainly have a story, and for me personally, I'll jump back to this guy's different perspective in a second, but my particular story, and some of you who, if you know me in real life, you probably would have heard this story as well. But for some of you who don't, I'm pretty sure you guys can tell your own stories. Like, everyone has an interesting story because everyone remembers it so strikingly, like, vivid. Going back to me though, I was in freshman in high school. And being a freshman, whatever, I was just heading to art class around, earlier, around 9 a.m. And we had a class prior, so this is like my second or third class of the day. And while you're exiting class, this is in 2001, and a lot of you youngsters don't realize in 2001, there was no internet. Well, there was internet, but it was like really terrible DSL. If you're lucky, like broadband just came out, but some people were still on dial-up. So internet news didn't exist. Cell phones existed, but they weren't smartphones, and only like rich people had smartphones, or sorry, cell phones, and like news just kind of came through the TV. What was going on, very sparingly was on the internet. So when we were walking down the hallway, we hear some murmurs, some people down like the halls, other students say like, hey, did you hear like a plane hit a tower? Like, it's kind of crazy in New York. And And most of us, we're still young, 15, 14. We're just thinking, oh, okay, like that's terrible. That's like crazy news. You kind of, the weight of the situation never really dawned on us. And, we continue on to the art class and over like the next 5-10 minutes, people were still talking. And it's like, hey, like, did you hear about that plane that hit? And you're like, yeah, like, it's just crazy. And then someone said, yeah, they think it might be like it might not be like an accident, which is just like, okay, that's stupid. Because you don't have any complete information of what's going on. So as we start sitting down for class, and this whole thing's been going on for like a few minutes, and like 5 minutes in between classes while people are going, and we all go to our class, and the art teacher, he comes in and he says, hey, we've been instructed to turn on the TV and show you what's been going on, as it's, and I forgot the reasoning, but I think it was more or less, it's to give you guys a glimpse of what's going on in the world, and we need to see this because this is, I forgot the reason, but it was just something that I think it was more so more of the adults and just younger adults were just like, they understood the depth, and they realized like this is probably like this is something that we can't avoid, especially as teenagers, and people, teenagers want to be aware, and they want to feel like they're adults. So I think it seemed appropriate, and obviously no one is going to go back and say, I wish I'd never seen that. Like, no one's going to say that. So he turns on the TV, and then the news of like the second plane just colliding, and that's like when shit hit the fan. Like everyone just seen, like, I don't know, the moment like that TV was turned on, I think that was probably like the biggest, like vividly like searing that whole moment like in your head of like what's going on. And I'm not at ground zero too, so even like trying to fathom like being in that situation is just holy shit. Like I can't, it's in hindsight, like that's freaking nuts. So I mean that's kind of more of like my 9/11 type of story, and I'm not going to dive too deep into that because actually kind of reflecting on a lot more. I think a lot of us, I'm only speaking for myself, but I think a lot of us, I think it's good. I don't say good, but it's something that at least most adults, I would say, it's something that we were all a part of to an extent, and it's something that it's a talking piece that it makes us relatable to other Americans, I guess. And if you hear me laugh, I'm not trying to laugh like because it's a joke. It's more of like a nervous laugh. So kind of keep that in mind, but. It's just something unique because I mean, I could explain to you like how I felt the whole week, after those like initial moments and probably a couple hours of that day, like everything, all the conversations just became a blur, and it was just more of a feeling, like I don't know, like a pit in your stomach, and you just like, and then like the anger in your chest, and then like your brain just thinking so many things, and I think it was a big dose of like the real world, but it was probably this, yeah, something. It's one of those things where you obviously no one asked for it, so so going back to the Reddit story, I caught this guy in this Denver Broncos topic, talking about reflecting on the 9/11 story, and he offered a very unique perspective of, he was a guy that he missed 9/11. So, if you want to try to put yourself in this guy's shoes, he goes by the name of like Der Innkeeper. I don't know, but check him out on like the Denver Broncos like topic. It was called like 60 for 60 Innocents Lost. I just popped onto this, and it initially started out as a conversation of Ed, the dead guy. I forgot his last name. I should look it up. But Ed, he was a football player that got injured, and when imagine him waking up to, he has a broken leg, comes out of surgery, and then the world completely changes, like when he wakes up. So for him, like someone mentioned, hey, the whole week must be surreal for Ed. and kind of pointed out like the whole week just seems surreal to all of us. And I'm pretty sure everyone can agree with that. It's certainly not an everyday thing. And the guy who responded, who I mentioned, Durr, he says he missed it. Quote unquote, I was in the Navy on a boat out of Norfolk, and we were ordered out to sea. By noon, we were gone. I had one phone call home to the wife. Quote, see you in a bit. When's that? When we get back. Okay. A month later, we pull back in. We had no real news, no radio, no usable internet. Yeah, we knew the towers fell. But that was it. It was 30 days of withstanding, and that was it. We go back, and it felt weird. It was like everyone had lost their mind. So, that seemed like very, just completely different to me. Because, it's something all Americans have done, or witnessed. It's a blanket statement if we're in the States for 9/11. But imagine if you are, American, and this guy, he was in the Navy, so very patriotic. He just happened to not be in the country. He had no communication, so he never experienced that whole pandemonium hysteria. But the heart and like the spirit and everything else, he's obviously true American. So you put yourself in his shoes, and you imagine you go on a vacation or a cruise, and then you come back a week or two later, and the world's completely different. Like everything you've seen or known, the attitudes of people have changed. Like, the world's completely flipped their shit. And you put yourself in his shoes, and it just seems like holy crap! Like, is this like a sci-fi movie or something? Like I find that to be incredibly different, and I don't mean that in a bad way whatsoever. Like, who the hell am I to even consider? Oh yeah, like, oh, you were part of 9/11. You weren't even in the States. Like, you can't sympathize. Like, that seems kind of lame. But this guy's offering his view, and I think that's pretty cool. Someone asked, hey, like he mentions, it seemed like everyone lost their mind, or he said everyone had lost their mind. And another guy says, hey, how so? And this guy, he dives more specifically into the story. So I think you guys will enjoy this little piece, only because it offers a different perspective that I don't think many people have actually thought about, and I don't know, it helps keep me grounded to look at different perspectives on the matter. Not to say like my views and ideas will change, but I certainly think that discussing and conversing and trying to consider other points of view leads to greater understanding, whether or not you can agree with the person. But I think there are some cool takeaways that we can kind of learn from this, or at the very least, kind of get a gauge in how, as Americans, how we've changed over time, or if we've changed at all. So I'm going to read up his follow post, kind of explaining how Americans have lost their minds, at least in this guy's view, in regard to the situation. National Guard at the airports with M16/M4s. The rainbow threat level plastered on every TV. You all look scared. So I think he was referring to like when he came back to the States. That was how crazy everything looked. Like when we came back, we all just seemed to be very, very scared. Like, very scared. Mobilization to Afghanistan. We came back, and all this stuff was well underway, and the invasion bombing campaign was starting. AFTRS, afters, assuming, gave us one channel of news, movie, sports, while we were twiddling about in the water. Yay, we didn't miss the Super Bowl. Boo, there's literally nothing on. It's not like they are going to show the towers coming down over and over and over. I'm sure you all got to see that on repeat for weeks. I got to watch green screen down on in sonar control. You all got to watch Bush and Cheney work up the country to war. Not hard for Afghanistan. I got to watch the combined data plots and see no airplanes in the sky. We were waiting for the next wave. Yay, AEGIS. Aegis? If it flies, it dies. Watching the U.S. Navy set up a pickup line from Maine to Florida, watching and waiting for whatever. We came home and there was literally an American flag on everything. Maybe it was just me. On the boat was quiet though. No news, no radio. And now, I was a hero. What? Thank you for your service. Ugh, come on y'all. I must quit on a boat. Go love some army dudes who are about to go get shot into pieces. I appreciate it and how you doing and all that. But seriously, have we gone insane? Yes, we did. Now, I don't know, just reading that kind of just seems, pretty surreal in, at least, putting yourself in his perspective, to me at least. Because, this guy literally was just on a boat for 30 days. He had a call, I think, before the whole event happened, and just came back to complete pandemonium. He was clearly aware of what was going on, probably from other people or what was in the news in hindsight, but in real time, I think South Park did a really great episode on this after the 9/11 of how people just never seemed to stop watching the news, just wanted to hear more and more about it. Not hear more and more, but just try to figure out what or why 9/11 happened. And our only news source was the news or a news on television or a newspaper, not so much the internet at the time, and people conversing with each other. There are stories, a lot of stories for 9/11, and most of them seem to be like rumors of I don't know, like there was one where they said there was a guy who was on the 100th floor, and when the towers collapsed, he when the whole thing quote unquote collapsed, he just happened to be in a pocket that fell with the whole building, and he never got crushed. They came up with some weird theory that he fell 100 stories with the building, but it would just seem like it was a weird combination of things to where he never got caught in the rubble and he lived. And that was in obviously 2001. So you don't, no internet, no people to prove you wrong, in 2 seconds. It's just, you almost took people's word for it, and you would go, oh shit, really, that's nuts. So, it's, yeah. So definitely hearing, so when you're kind of caught up in all that news and pandemonium, you kind of just, you're with them, you're living in the moment, you're not thinking long term, you're not, you can't say you're not thinking clearly. We were all trying to think clearly. We're all trying just to figure the fuck out what was going on. And then we have this guy, the Durr innkeeper dude, who's just doing his job. Just kind of hear tower fell, or there was a couple towers. He might have heard that, but he didn't see the whole. He wasn't part of the whole aftermath or the whole thing. So, I find it very unique of his telling of how kind of as Americans what we've done to absorb so much information, and we just became so scared and just so nervous about so many things. And this guy's from the Navy, so and he just comes back without all the experiences and knowledge we have, and he's kind of coming from a perspective of, hey, I did my job. I'm doing, I pre 9/11, I was this person. Post 9/11, he never changed because he wasn't experiencing the whole thing in real time, I feel like most Americans did, and it seems I don't know, he just is someone that I don't know, I feel like he would be the most objective person, or one of the few objective people that can probably see hey, what's kind of changed before, what's kind of changed after, and kind of have as Americans, have we actually gone back or forward of our mindsets. And so yeah, and speaking of mindsets, this is a perfect transition. I don't have any music. I don't want to put any music, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say nothing for 5 seconds. And 5 seconds was a lot of time. That's a long time. Silence. So I'm using the silence as a way for transitions, because if you're trying to listen to this podcast I really want there to be either rain sounds, and I'm going to add more ambiance sounds too. Once I figure out like what makes sense, I might change it like every 30 seconds. I might go from rain to rain plus fireplace, which seems very nonsensical and oxymoronish, because if it's raining, wouldn't the fireplace not be working? Because wouldn't the rain be in the fire? See, I don't know anything about fireplaces, so I just might be a freaking idiot. Okay, I know I'm a freaking idiot, but I'm smart in a few aspects. Just in real life, I'm a little bit behind, just ever so slightly. But transitioning into kind of, Americans losing their minds, I wanted to discuss Bill Burr's latest special, and kind of jump onto Dave Chappelle and Aziz Anazari too on their latest specials, because it certainly seems that, and I've been one to complain and moan about this as well on my podcast in the past, is that it seems that more and more people are just trying to either sound smarter than they are, or just trying to, in the words of Aziz Ansari, outwoke each other. Which, if you guys aren't familiar with this, and I don't know my specific demographic yet on this podcast, and I don't know who's listening per se. So I can't, I can only imagine you guys are either young adults or older adults, but the commonality is you're all probably trying to sleep. So I can't pin a demographic yet. But it seems that more and more people are just scared to host what's on their mind and have an opinion, especially in 2019. Like, it seems that over the last few years, just having any semblance of opinion or trying to stand for anything, you meet so many people that are trying to outsmart or trying to blanket your statements with either absurd remarks, troll remarks, or just trying to focus on the absolute nuances of a statement that isn't meant to be taken as a whole. Maybe it's just something as an adult to where and this is what I can't stand, and I do this all the time on this podcast, and I do it because I understand too. I'm not trying, I don't want to try to ruffle any feathers on this podcast. This is a chill podcast. Okay, I might create a podcast that might ruffle feathers, and that might be a morning one. But this is one where I just like to talk, like to be the thoughts that kind of the stream of consciousness, I should say. I don't know if I said that right. Stream of consciousness. Perfect. A stream of consciousness that, well, I don't know, it kind of just pops in your head, so you don't have to overthink. Close your eyes, just let the audio sounds, background noises, and the sound of my dull voice put you to sleep. That's my goal for the podcast. Okay, just create a relaxing experience, not try to sound super cheesy, be semi-interesting enough, but not too interesting to where you're awake. So, or you stay awake for hours. So, my whole vibe is chill here. So I have to add all these qualifiers. But it seems that in face-to-face interactions, if you say a statement like, "Oh, people are losing their minds," or man, kids these days don't work hard enough and they expect everything. Okay, so I mean, those are general statements that seem pretty safe. You speak to someone face-to-face, most normal people, I would say, be like, "Oh yeah," or even if you disagree, you'd be like, "Yeah, but I think X, Y, Z." Okay, you offer your point of view. It's a conversation. It doesn't have to be an argument. Okay, but you can make those statements and converse. That's cool. That's how human interaction has always been, at least to me. And when you have a very strong opinion on one thing or another, which is say gun control or abortion or some, I don't know what's going on. This whole thing with e-vapes and stuff too. It seems like even just any semblance, again, in IRL, real life, people tend to be more understanding, but it seems that more people online and people are just expressing their thoughts on social media way more frequently than in real life. And I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but I do sound like an old fogey. But it seems like even just making a generalized statement, you have to throw 30 qualifiers and say, "I think this only if X, Y," I think all people should do yoga. Only if, and then you have to throw in qualifiers. Only if you're trying to better yourself only if you believe in yourself, only if you're trying to do and I don't know, I can't think of many examples right now, because I don't want to go on Twitter and try to pull up hard examples, but it seems like anything you post online, whether if you're trying to tell a joke, whether you're trying just to offer friendly banter, even just a standard snarky response that could be delivered pretty well, is always taken like the wrong way. And Bill Burr's special, I'll start there, is quite refreshing in a sense of he's probably like the third comedian that I've listened to and watched in the last few weeks that's had a stand-up special. It was Aziz, Chappelle, and then Bill Burr's the recent one. And all of these comics, as someone who wants to dive into comedy himself, and I do plan to, so eventually, when I say wants to, I'll start saying, yeah, during my comedic performances. Until then, well, it's more aspirational. I'm close. But these comedians have, through their body of work, through what they've done for society and relevance to like entertainment, have done phenomenal things. Aziz is just a happy-go-lucky, funny guy. He got caught up in some drama with like some bad date, and a woman accused him of like rape, despite the fact that she consented to it, and it was just like a bad date that she didn't like, and Aziz couldn't read her mind of saying, actually, I don't think she even said no, so it was just like, this is a terrible date. And Aziz talks about that. He talks more about like the whole out-wokeness, everyone's trying to out-compete with each other, and Bill Burr, who's just been grinding out at least for 15 to 20 years, at least 20 years as a comic. He's just slowly just worked his way up. He's been on everywhere from the Chappelle show. He's been in movies, usually as side characters. Now, and especially the last decade, he's been on Netflix. He has his own TV show now. A complete grinder, love the dude. And he does a phenomenal job of navigating through kind of his jokes, his comedy, and bringing I can't say a unique voice, because I think he's, in these comics, say a lot of what's on our minds, and they say it in a way to where they're able to, not convince, but get buy-in from an audience or a crowd, through their logic and understanding, and jokes, of course. Laughter is what we all need at the end of the day, especially moving forward. I don't think this is semi off tangent, but I think the economy is doing so well right now that everyone can afford to bitch and complain. But once the next recession hits, and people are going to be they're going to be spending more time looking for jobs, and focusing all about themselves, specifically that they're not going to spend all their time trying to find every nuanced statement. So going back to Bill talks about how you can't even breathe or even tell a joke without 20 people saying, oh, are you offended on behalf of you can make a joke about gnomes, something that doesn't even exist, and you might run into an angry crowd of people, the vocal minority. You give them a platform like Twitter or any social platform, and they have no problem just saying, hey, how dare you offend the gnome people? These gnome people are blah blah blah. And gnomes don't even exist, but there's always some semblance of empathy or something towards a group that doesn't matter or doesn't exist. And Bill talks more about other specific cultures and groups of people in real life, and I don't remember that verbatim, but I tend to agree with what most Bill Burr says, me personally, or at least kind of the do what you want. If you don't like it, go screw yourself. Go fuck a lemon. I don't know. That's just me. And he actually performed his latest special in England, I believe. So I think for him it was just an event of just him saying what the fuck is wrong with America these days? Everyone is so like, triggered, it seems like. And it almost seemed like it was something that was ironic at first. Like, even a few years ago. I still get randomly mad at anything, but, like, it wasn't, unless my anger was just, like, fake, just like, like happy anger. Or just releasing stress, not really anything stupid, absurd. But now, like, people are just starting, like, coalitions or like, groups or, like, whatever this cancel culture is, or, I don't know. It just seems like it's so much bullshit. Like these people have nothing better to do. Like, I don't know, it just seemed like when people protested or whenever they went out, people who really, really, like, fought for something did more than just type 4 letters on Twitter or try to be snarky or try to, I don't know, like, I don't know, I even came up with, like, some joke, or like, I had a conversation with my wife about dressing up as, she made a joke as, like, dressing up as the Quizler. And I was like, Quizler? It's like, what is that, like the Riddler and the Joker? Like, did they just, like, adopt a baby, or, like, did they combine their DNA and come up with the Quizler? Does the Quizler just go around local pubs, offering, like, asking really tough questions for local trivia, and gets a lot of people pissed off? Like, is that what he does? I mentioned that, and just some dude's just like, well, by the way, there was a quiz type of villain in Batman, and he was a terrible villain, and he would blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm just like, okay, like, what does the hell? It's like, I just wanted to offer a joke, I guess if I take a step back, this is just me talking out loud. Yes, if I am posting on Twitter, obviously I'm leaving myself up for that medium. But it seems pretty strange because, like, Twitter, I feel like everyone has their own unique use of it, especially with the new Twitter algorithm. It's just like, it's mainly focused on having conversations and not so much spouting all of your nonsense unless if you're a celeb. So, obviously when you post your stuff on Twitter, I think most people just post what their thoughts are, or some people try to be funny. People like me, I like to complain to companies. That's my thing. Like, yeah, I know I talk about, like, a lot of marketing on my Twitters, my personal Twitters, at Joey_Montano, just if you're curious. But it's not supposed to be anything that's meant to be taken seriously. And it just, I don't know, it just seems like certain crowds are just so fixated on trying to harp on, like, the next social injustice that really, like, I'll be honest, it doesn't seem like more than 1% of the population even cares about. And, like, here's the thing, 1% of the population is still 3 million people. Okay, if I had 1% of the U.S. population listening to my podcast, I'm pretty sure I would be the number 2 or number 1 podcast ever in existence, like, hands down. If 3 million people just listen to this podcast an hour every other day, or an hour and a half, like, that's an absurd amount. It just blows my mind. So most of these vocal minority groups, I'm assuming, just always they seem to appeal probably to, like, 1% of the population. It's gotta. Like, how many people are really upset about what's going on in the world when there's so many other things that directly affect their lives that they don't pay attention to? Okay. Like, it's a lot easier to complain about, someone misspelling, like, the B or like, say, beach, and they said, bitch or something to I don't know, like, out of context. Like, people are so focused, would rather harp on that and not spend 5 to 10 minutes voicing their opinion on, like, a local initiative that they can drive to their city hall. Dude, I sound like such an old man. Oh my God, when did this happen? Like, oh man. Okay, so I might be going off on a little bit of a tangent, so anyway, Bill Burr talks more about that, and I don't know, his body of work, he tends to say, like, the right thing at the right time. Obviously, he probably does a lot of tours and stand-ups as well before he does his specials and gets his material right. Or, gets it perfect. That's perfect enough for Netflix, I guess. And it just, I don't know, when I heard that podcast and then that special, I thought it was great. And I think the initial reviews of Bill Burr's Netflix special are pretty positive. And tracking back to Aziz, he spent most of his stand-up, I think he was sitting down for one. I think he literally was just sitting down on a stool. And he just had his mic, and he was just, I don't know. It could be a gimmick, but he seems to be a kind of guy that wears he wears his emotions on his sleeve. And he just seemed like he was just sick. He was just tired of just the constant nagging, the constant complaining, the constant just blah, 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 blah. These people are comedians. They want to, they're trying to tell jokes. When you go to a stand-up thing, you kind of have to know what you're expecting when you're, you want to expect to kind of go in a place where you just want to laugh, you don't want to think. But it seems like more people are just so charged up about what other people think of them that if a joke somehow affects them, it's just us against the world. And I honestly don't even know if this is if older people are even complaining anymore. Is it just millennials and young? I feel like Gen Z doesn't give a crap. They're not even on social media. They hate us. Maybe I'm just self-reflecting too hard on millennials. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. But Aziz, he just seemed like he was distraught. He was just tired. Obviously he was a comedian and could be a gimmick, but he just talked about the whole outwoking each other and making fun of people are always trying to sound smarter and XYZ and yeah, I don't know. Just reading from his body language, it just seemed like it just seemed like it was a very genuine comedy storytelling type approach. I don't know if his comedy this episode was super hilarious, but it was super relatable. And I think once you kind of reach that level of notoriety and famous comedian, you're more so just saying what's on your mind, and because you've put a track record of saying what's on your mind prior in a funny way, that people are willing to listen to you, as a comedian. Like I said, people don't really want to think too much when they're out in shows. People want to almost hear what's kind of on your mind, and if it happens to resonate in a funny or any entertaining manner, then yeah, it makes sense. So, yeah, as he's talked a little bit more about that, he briefly talked about his allegation or whatever with that terrible date he had. And I don't know if the reviews of the Aziz are good or bad. I really don't care to check up on it. Actually, I'm trying to even just stop looking at reviews altogether and trying to, what's that word? What's the phrase? Oh, yeah. Think for myself. Yeah, I'm trying to do that. Do a little bit more of that. So, obviously, I think reviews are at least a good system to gauge whether or not something could be good or bad, but there's no such thing as absolutes. And going back to Aziz, like I said, it was a pretty interesting stand-up special or sit-down special he did. And he was, I forgot what that one was called. Was that one called Triggered? Might have been. But that was another comedian's play on, dude, society, chill the fuck out. We just want to tell jokes. For most of us. And it just seems like people aren't doing that. And I think the more and more people are just realizing, wait, what the fuck are we so nervous about? Because I'm starting to reach to the point where, you quote me on this, I don't care, it's 44 minutes in. If you quote me on this, no one's going to give a crap. Until I'm famous. But if I ever get famous enough and you quote me, then people are going to start reacting. So either way, it's fucked up regardless. But I think as long as, I don't know, it just seems like if everyone's complaining, if everyone is bitching and moaning and complaining and, getting worked up over things that only affect a very small group of people, and albeit, it would matter to them, but on the grand scheme of things, it's, if everyone's complaining, no one's listening. If everyone's just too busy talking, everyone's too, and the people that want to, want to do their own thing, I feel like they're forced to quote unquote listen, but they're not trying to listen because that's not their job. And the people that, complain about a certain tweet or a certain view or something that is almost a non-issue for no reason, it's, I'm trying to think, like, what do you gain out of these things? Because I don't know, information seems to be a comedian's, like, I can only speak for what I've noticed, but it's like like having too much information kind of ruins the whole idea of a joke. You can't. I don't know. Like there was a comedian that talked about a long time ago. He made a joke about. He's like, my friend was so healthy. I thought that was great, but sometimes he takes it overboard. And he goes to an example and says, he's like, my friend, I love him to death, great shape, but he takes the bun off his damn burger. And like the crowd ate it up, and this is like 10 to 15 years ago when I heard this bit, and I thought it was like some of the, how he said it was like some of the funniest shit ever. But imagine him saying that joke now in 2019. Yeah, man, my friend is so healthy, but he's so ridiculous. He ended up taking the bun off his burger. I'm like, damn, that's the whole point of the burger. Like, imagine saying that, and then 50,000 people on Twitter, or even like a heckler, would say, well, actually, the keto diet will help you lose weight, and if you eat carbs, you'll die. Science has overproduced sugars. They've pushed Oreos, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm terribly sorry. As you can tell, I really have very, very little qualms about how I sound on this podcast. But I'm sorry if you're trying to sleep. I'm terribly sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. But it's true. I mean, like, no one wants to go to a show and hear some like smart aleck, some smart ass. And whatever happened to calling people smart asses? Like, I'm a freaking jackass. I know that. I'm an idiot. I'm like an idiot savant, apparently. But like, yeah, whatever happened to like calling people a smart ass? Like, it's not the point of like the joke. The point of the joke is to make people laugh. It's not to just make statements for people to correct. That's internet arguments. I don't know. I have a lot of theories on that between like Twitter, between Reddit, especially. People just love to try to one up each other with like a funny statement, and it's like the same like generic, pick 200 templates like blanket statements that exist. And these are just pockets of like the vocal minority that seem to actually are getting more influence. Maybe not. See, I don't know. Because like, I feel like older people just complain about older people's stuff and no one listens to them. But maybe that crap matters. I don't see. This is where I get all introspective and I start overthinking. I'm done with that. I am done with that. Going back to like the whole comedy point, Bill Burr definitely talks more about what the fuck's going on with Americans. Aziz seems distraught, just tired of what Americans and the culture of just trying to one up each other. It's gone, and then before all that came like, or maybe this guy was came between them. The guy named Dave Chappelle, which his special Sticks and Stones, I thought it was hilarious. Like, there's not any additional things I would describe that. I left that silence there in case you had a reaction in your head that might have been, oh my God. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I'm overthinking that one. But Dave Chappelle came with the special Sticks and Stones a couple weeks ago. And this is September 12th when I'm recording. So hopefully if I release this episode today, it will be September 12th when it comes out. But he released a special, and it got mixed reviews. When I say mixed reviews, and Joe Rogan talks about this on his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, and I'll see if I can find a clip and I'll link it to the description, like in the podcast information. But I thought I love Dave Chappelle. His body of work, is great. Obviously, I think he's kind of transcended from comedian to just a funny guy that talks about the world. There's not really anything more. He just talks about what he sees in a funny manner. I guess that's comedy, but he just happens. I don't know. He just seems to be more or less the voice of reason. I can't say out of reason, but see, there I go again. Just freaking qualifiers. To me, he seems to be a voice of reason. There you go. Of like an objective voice of reason, because everyone just gets too caught up in what like the emotion that like. I think we just need to take a step back and just look at the collective. And I think that's what he does in his special. And he has a very phenomenal bit on the LGBTQ. I think it was like a 5-minute bit, and I'm not even going to go dive into it. I think, honestly, was that, I don't know, at the time of the recording when he said it, always put like the context of the time with the comedy special. And he... I don't know, it rang very true, and it was probably one of the best bits I've heard in a long time. And I'm not really easily impressed. Okay, I'm kind of easily impressed, but I'm generally not. I'm generally not easily impressed. So he comes out with this bit about the LGBTQ community and how they're all like in a car, and how everyone in that community is making their own semblance of progress, and how generally society tends to view them at the specific moment. Now I say that because before I ended up watching his special, apparently Rotten Tomatoes had like 5 or 7 critics review his stand-up special, and they didn't leave the users to actually review the whole thing, and all the critics gave the Chappelle special zero tomatoes, whatever that means, a complete rotten tomato. And the words of Joe Rogan, he said, he's like, what's the point of getting like 5 or the 7 most progressive, left-wing people out there to try to like cancel, or the audacity of them to try to think that they can cancel any sort of Chappelle presence by giving it a 0. And preventing anyone else from talking about it. Because the moment they turned down like the user reviews, the score went from 0 from the critics through 99% from the users. Okay, so in that respect, even for the internet community or whatever, it's just X amount of people that have certain power, or they believe they have certain power, trying to push their own whatever agenda that they're having, trying to mute people, are trying to, I can't say convince, but like, what's the right word for that? Convince via star reviews or critiques that people shouldn't be watching XYZ or else they're terrible. But the fact of the matter is, if 99% of the people love that shit, like love Chappelle, and they love that special, and they give it amazing scores, then like if you're on the other end, accept the fact that 1, it might not be for you. 2, yeah, it does hurt your feelings if he says a couple of things, but hey, that's on you to feel triggered. Like, it's not his job to make sure you're not triggered. That's a self thing. Like, if someone says something to you, it's up to you to decide if you're offended. It's your culture, it's your values. It's not a universal thing. So, I think that's what the whole statement meant, is like, hey, like, it might hurt you, but the reality is, for 99% of the population, or at least of the community or internet world or whatever, or in Chappelle's world, like, we like it. Those are jokes, and despite your quote unquote critique power, you're just an insane vocal minority. And I think that's what most people just tend to forget. And I think the Chappelle special especially let's just opens up the discussion of this. And I get that this podcast is mainly just me ranting and talking, and shouldn't be me ranting as much. I know we're nearing the 55-minute mark, but I don't know. I always find that just talking and discussing these things out loud and try to do it in a logical manner I'm not trying to convince people to go on my side or against the side. I just try to let people know what my thoughts are and let it be. And I don't mind discussions. I actually do love discussions that aren't like super heated arguments and things that are more in the gray space. Because as what Bill implies, Bill says verbatim, Bill Burr, everything has to be in absolutes apparently in the United States. Like you can't just say one statement. It has to be X, Y, Z. Like there's no gray area, which makes the least amount of sense to me. Sorry, what he said makes complete sense. But the fact that I was saying this completely wrong. Bill Burr is exactly right. The fact that most people believe that everything is an absolute and the world isn't gray, because that's where all these complaints and people are bitching about. It's just they just ignore that a gray area exists. Like I can say anything is possible, and the first person can say, "Well, did you know that your car, your oil can never be fused into electricity?" or something stupid. I was like, "Well, no shit, that's not the point." I was like, the point is, it's just a general thought to where you don't overthink. It's just released to the world. And I feel like people are trying to take advantage, or I feel like people try to think they're really funny, trying to be that one guy that can comment and then somehow post that screenshot and throw it up on a different medium and then get a bunch of people to be like, "Oh my God, you're hilarious," despite the fact that, no, it wasn't. You just happened to say something that only a very, very small fraction of people happen to agree with, and you all happen to meet in the very same medium. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking this. Maybe I'm underthinking this. I don't know, guys. I'd say, what do you think? But I also know that I'm trying to make these episodes between 50 minutes and 90 minutes, and this might be between 60 minutes and 90 minutes. And this might be a good 60-minuter. Mainly because... No, actually, I take that back. I'm probably going to make it like 70, 80 minutes in this case, because I feel like I've actually been talking pretty well in the last hour without many breaks. And I want to give you guys a chance to slow down and not think too much, but just, again, close your eyes if you're trying to sleep. I don't know if you guys have tried any... like smoking like weed or cannabis or whatever. But for me, that actually helps. I just kind of have like a vape, and yes, there's all this news of vape stuff. Let's not talk about that today. I want to record 2 episodes today. One I'm releasing. This is the one I'm releasing, and then another one for tomorrow. And that's going to be probably like my football stuff. I really enjoyed the football picks. Now I know in the last week I've only gotten very few downloads for that one, and it makes sense. It's not super topical, and most people probably want the results then and there. But that's not going to stop me. This is my podcast. No one can tell me what I can or can't say, and it's up to you to decide if you want to listen to it or not. And if you want to complain. If you want to offer constructive criticism, I've said this before, I would love it. There are certain things I know I need to be doing. It's just more so the time value of effort hasn't been shown yet. So I'd rather make my podcast a little bit better incrementally versus trying to make big jumps every podcast episode, which might take me 2 to 4 weeks to, I don't know, find like better quality, find an intro and, do all these things. Again, I'm probably thinking this, and that's fine. You guys are the ones listening. So yeah. So in other news, if you don't know, I do have ADHD. So if you're a professor or something that's listening, and I do believe there are a couple people that are watching my activity in a different Twitter account that are professors that have no reason to follow me. They follow me like they're regular people. They're professors out in Europe, and they just. I'm sure they don't like any of my. I don't think they like any of my stuff. I like a lot of their stuff because they talk about a lot of psychology. But they they follow me, and I think they're well aware of what I post on Twitter. But I think they're just documenting all the stuff I say, and be like, hey, look at this ADHD kid. Look at the tendencies of this boy, of this brown boy, you know? I don't know. But, like, I don't know. But, like, when I think about it, like, that's kind of like the level of, I can't say paranoia because it's very plausible. Like, everyone has access to anyone. If you go on Twitter, you have access. You go on Facebook. By the way, if you, before I go on my Facebook rant, if you're on Facebook, definitely add me, or add Droolish Podcast to the Facebook, or like that page. See, I'm marketing by trade, but as you can tell, I don't like promoting my own stuff. I need to promote my own stuff more. Okay, in order for me to get better, I have to put my stuff out there and then get the criticism, see what I'm doing right, make myself better. Because if I don't, then how am I supposed to say like I'm the shit? I can say I'm the shit, but if I've done nothing to prove it, and then if I've done nothing long enough, and when I start doing it, I am shit. Like, that's on me. So I need to, just keep posting this stuff out there. And so yeah, I found Facebook. Please like Droolish Podcast. I probably need to do that right now as well. So I'm actually going to hop on the Facebooks, and I'll walk you through it. I'll walk you through it via my audio, I guess. Via audio. Hit up Facebook, log in search, type DROO, that's 2 O's, Lish, Lish. And then Droolish will be the first thing that pops up. It'll say page. You'll see a blue banner, and I'm hoping to change that down the road. So if you're listening to this at a future date in 2019 and it's not blue, well, still it's Droolish. Facebook.com/Droolish as well. I don't even like my own page. I need to like my own page. All right. I am my first liked page. Done. Cool. The biggest reason why I don't try to invite all my friends to like my podcast, there are 2 reasons, if you're curious. And feel free, like, most of my other stuff is, I'm done talking about that for now. And feel free to turn this off. Or if you want to listen to the rain, or I might have some, like a kindling or some fire in the background too at this point. I'm deciding. I'll let editing take care of it. I'm the editor. So, I don't want to be the guy who has to, I don't want to be the guy. Like, I don't want to invite people to like a page that they, I like the support. I like the verbal support of saying, hey, like, you do you go ahead, you hype me up, and I'll go ahead and do it. Like, that's the kind of support I really like. And if you're even more accomplished, or if you're like a celebrity or something like that, and you're like, oh shit, like, hey Joe, you're doing good shit, or you have a good head on your shoulder. That's just like, oh my God, for me, it's like even people who are super successful are giving me props. At least that's how I imagine it. That to me, that's like a really, real cool thing. And there's a lot more weight to that of that than just a empty like. Telling all my friends to like this and then them not listening, and then like, if I don't know, it just doesn't. It's not so much a genuine thing. It's not so much a social clout thing. But I also just don't want to throw like what I'm doing in everyone's face in the sense of like, I don't know, being the obnoxious guy. Like this is, like I said, this is a low-key podcast, and it doesn't seem, for me, my consistency is like, I'll do the marketing, I'll do everything else in my own time. It's going to be, if you caught me on Twitter, if I might respond to you on Twitter and be like, hey, check out my podcast, if that's something up your alley, probably not good. But I think it's certainly different enough for you to take a listen. And, I hope so. Like, I don't know, that's more my style, I guess. And I do plan, like I said, I still have bigger plans for this podcast, but I don't want to just add people and then just get blind likes, because it's just going to be other people in like my close, like, hometown friend community that will support, with the likes, but it's not, for me, like, I get more joy out of getting comments of people saying, hey, like, this has really helped. Like, this really helps me. or keep, kind of keep this up. Like, it helps me calm me down and sleep. And those are the types of comments and like I can't say, probably validation that, that proves that, hey, like maybe I'm onto something, or at least like if there's a net gain of 1, which I believe I have. Like, I do have some people who regularly download this, and again, super awesome. I love you guys. But some people might not be. I don't know. Some people just might want to take it up a notch and just personally thank me. And again, like, no one's obligated. Please don't. I'm not trying to like say you have to bow to me like that. No, I'm not implying that whatsoever. But it's one of those. I don't say but. Yeah, I like the sound of the word but I know how that comes off of. So I should say yet at the same time. I like that yet. Yeah, it's the effort that's put in. Like, a like, it takes one flick. And you can certainly think about something you like and you press it. It certainly has validation. I wholeheartedly always love that. Like that's still support. Like, you still take time out of your day to flick. I'm just talking about level of effort here. And then there's the comment of saying, lol, or hey, that's cool. Like, I love it. Again, you still took time out of your day. You clicked. You not only just clicked like, you opened the comment box and you said, hey, I really liked it. I'm like, that's even way better. Like, that's super better. You took more time, like, energy out of your day to say that. And then there are the people who just say, hey, like, this is super awesome, appreciative, and it helps. And they give a couple of reasons, and, and they might message me. And I would say, like, oh my God, like, this is freaking insane. Like that's, blows my mind. And I can only imagine, especially too, because I follow some YouTubers that have been growing. They kind of feel the same way of the stuff that they're building, from sports and whatnot. Like, they would start out with like a couple subscribers, and they would finally be at like a few thousand, and they're just super ecstatic and always grateful. And I always, for the longest time, would always wonder, like, hey, is that genuine or is that fake? And I'm starting to think that it's, like, speaking for myself, is that it feels like it has to be genuine for like 99% of the people. Like, I can't say how many people are actively listening to this, because I don't know. It really could just be the same 7 people, and maybe 5 people actually listen the whole way, or maybe just people like certain gimmicks and they move on, and that's fine. Like, everyone does them. And if you don't like me, then screw you. No, I don't know. But I shouldn't be joking. I know we're past the hour mark. But yet. See, yet. I believe. No, actually, no. I think I lost my point. This was a good run for me. Hour and 8 minutes of just pure talking, and I've come a long way. Okay, so I'm just going to be long-winded for the rest of the time. You guys can keep listening. I'm thinking about adding more just quiet sounds for like the last 5 minutes. It's more ambiance too. Yeah, I want to do the ambiance thing for like the last 5 minutes, because I'm starting to think more of when you're trying to go to sleep, or when I try to sleep, how my wife sleeps, and reading more sleeping articles and trying to educate myself, with helping insomnia. The the background noises probably don't need to be too long or too soft, and I do know that the white noise, especially, that's more calming. It's not jarring. So my voice tends to be. I have a very long-winded approach, especially when I'm in this mode. When I'm calmed down and I'm able to talk more of like a long-windedness, it's a lot easier for my noise to blend in the background versus kind of the earlier aspect of the show where maybe I'm wrong, at least how I perceive it, but like earlier aspect of the show where I'm more of just talking about stuff I know, or just thoughts that are more fast-paced. And it's all based off of like excitability. So like if I'm super excited, I focus on just talking more about getting to the point and whatnot. And at this point, you can probably tell, like, the long-windedness tends to draw out. And I don't see, I don't think it's going to be that much of a detriment. If anything, it might be a more positive thing. Because, again, I'm speaking from experience here. The whole point of this podcast was started because my general style of talking is more like this. And like I said, I noticed a lot of people in client meetings would tend to yawn or fall asleep. So that's not even adding like the background noises, and even I just have that voice that apparently apparently that doesn't let people I don't know, like, I can't say it's ignoring it. Like it has a calming effect. Like, you know, it's not a detriment. It's just a calming effect. So again, that doesn't help me in convincing my clients and whatnot and keeping them interested in whatever I'm talking about. But they are very calm, very happy when I talk. So you know, it's a trade-off, and that's kind of the reason why this podcast exists, is because the music and the backgrounds, my voice, especially my voice, I believe, does help calm. Maybe I might say things that were probably, especially this episode, notice this is probably turning a little bit more entertainment than I had anticipated. But that's probably in my head, and I leave it up to you guys to decide. And the only way for me to just figure that out is if you add me on Twitter or Facebook or send me a message or email. So email is droolishpodcast@gmail.com. The Twitter, I think it is at Droolish Podcast. My Facebook is /Droolish. And, you know, just Google Droolish, and you'll just get all the sources there. Let's just keep it simple. Just Google it. Google it. So, yeah, I don't think I have anything else I really wanted to talk about for this particular episode. If you're interested in other episodes, I'll throw you some insights. So, my next episode, it will be the NFL one. So, I've been trying to do NFL pick'ems, and I'll talk more about it in the next podcast. But if you're a football fan, I really love to guess and gamble with football. And this is probably going to be the first year that I'm actually going to gamble like real money, and not like $5-10, like maybe a little bit more. Maybe I'll just pull out like a good hundo. I don't know. I'll just break some yards or fill out some surveys. No, I have a couple $100. I still, you know, I gamble responsibly most of the time. I have to add that caveat. Most of the time, I gamble responsibly. Yet, I'm working on trying to perfect my gambling, my gambling picks, my sports picks. I can't say gambling because most of these picks require like a lot of due diligence and understanding like the momentum of the teams, like how they're going in, how they're going out, like you know what is it like? What do the leaders talk about? Like, for example, like the Browns. The Browns are scary last week. Like I went through the logic of like picking them, but I also offer like other ways that it might not work out. So you kind of just have to do your own due diligence. So I like to talk more about that stuff, and I want to prove to you guys that like, hey, like over time, like not only will I be right, like more frequently, but hopefully I can prove to you that I'll be a consistent winner. So again, it's not supposed to be super exciting or interesting because it's literally just a Droolish podcast, but just me talking football. So I'm trying to mix that up a little bit more. I certainly don't want to make this a football-only podcast. That just seems stupid because the whole point of this is to go to sleep. And the football is supposed to be just a drawn-out version of me talking to help you go to sleep. Yeah. But if I happen to actually be really good at it, then maybe I'll create a new podcast that's specific around it. But if not, who knows? So that's coming up. If you're like I said, interested in anime, I'm releasing a 10-hour episode, which is in the works. I know last episode I mentioned that, and I found an editor. I've looked at some of the initial visuals. It's probably not like up to par of what I had in mind. I'll be honest with you, but it's been almost 2 months since I released the episode quote-unquote 5, which happens to be episodes 5 through 9. And I really wanted to get an updated YouTube version, and like I said, the overall job has been solid. It's just, it's a lot harder for me to explain visually what I want to see and explain it to other people. So I have to work on that for myself and just do that. But But also my mind changes like all the time. So whenever episode 5 of the anime one comes out, which oh man, that one, I really hope that one gets more than like 8 views. I'm really gonna try to make that one a real effort because, like I said, I spent 10 hours and probably that was a 10 hours worth of recording, but it still took me 4 weeks to get that off the ground because I have to create the list. I actually had to rank it and then offer my own criteria and then explain the logic, and then had to find a video editor that was willing to turn a 10-hour audio into a 10-hour video that didn't cost me an arm and a leg. That also wasn't a shiesty person. Like Fiverr, oh jeez. Don't get me started on Fiverr. Fiverr, not Fiverr. Fiverr. Anyways, let's end on a good note. You guys, I hope you guys get some Z's. Do your best. Just calm yourself. I hear warm showers work. Episode 2, I talk about other ways to go to sleep as well. And I don't want to reiterate it here because you should be sleeping. Maybe not. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think. I'm going to be adding different timestamps too for when the rain comes. In the rain, if you notice, it'll gradually come in. Before I made it come in like at the 15-minute mark. Now I actually have it started from the get-go. After the intro, but it'll slowly come in. So it still might take a couple minutes for the rain to start slowly seeping in the background. I think that's more subtle, and I think probably as I'm ending the show, I'm probably going to have a slow fade out as well with whatever sound I have. Whether if it's nature, rain, say like kindling and fires, or the wind blowing, or the beach. Like, see, there are a lot of different sounds. And I guess there's this whole thing with AMSR, which is like audio, like memory, like sensory reactions, which I guess it's just sounds that you make. So technically, I guess this podcast is AMSR as well, if it's just more of like an audio experience, which is just me sleeping. But let me know what you guys think. Like, I don't want to try to bastardize a certain category, but in the same vein, I want to help people. I want to get more eyeballs, or more earlobes, not eyeballs, more earlobes listening to this podcast. Assuming that, the quality gets better over time. And if you're one of those OGs that's been around since episode 1 and you're still kind of just wanting to listen and you're becoming a fan, let me know, what got your attention. I'm always curious. Let me know what your thoughts and feedback are on the podcast so far. I don't want to review this podcast with other random people that I don't know, mainly because everyone has their own ideas and their own perspectives, and they're not exactly going to be the audience that I'm going for. So that's why I said it's really tough for me to find the right people to gauge, because unless you're trying to sleep, like I said, for myself included, it's a lot harder to put yourself in the shoes of someone who might find benefit of this podcast. Again, I could be wrong. I usually am some of the time. It's just a lot of people often remember the times I'm right, though, too. So it's give and take. Yeah, but that is it, my friends. Very glad you are able to listen. And the OGs that keep downloading, wow, you're still amazing. Until then, guys, keep calm, dream easy, take care.